Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, let me thank Secretary Yellen for being our guest speaker at the Providence Chamber of Commerce last week. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you.
And I learned something there. I always do when I'm with the Secretary. She is the only person that has been chairman of the President's Council on Economic Advisors, chairman of the Federal Reserve, and Secretary of the Treasury. So thank you, Madam Secretary, for your work. And let me, Chairman Powell, extend my congratulations for your reappointment to the Federal Reserve. Thank you. Chairman Powell, we've seen, as you both discussed, a steady job growth. What is troubling, though, is the labor participation rate has remained depressed. And until we get that participation rate up higher, we're going to have the complaints that we receive, the inability to get workers, et cetera. How do we do that, and what do you think are the causes of this fall off in the participation rate?
I didn't catch the very end of that.
The causes of the fall in the participation rate, and then how do we rectify those causes?
So it's very surprising. Since June of last year, the unemployment rate has dropped 6.5%, and participation has basically moved up to 0.2. It's sort of moved sideways, which was surprising. I think when unemployment insurance, enhanced unemployment insurance ran off, and schools reopened, and vaccination came, we all thought there would be a significant increase in labor supply, and it hasn't happened. So you ask why. There's tremendous uncertainty around that, but a big part of it is clearly linked to the ongoing pandemic. People answer surveys, and they're reluctant to go back to work. They're reluctant to leave their caregiving responsibilities and go back to work because they feel like schools might be closing again, things like that. So it's an issue, and I think what I'm taking on board is that it's going to take longer to get labor force participation back. We're not going right back to the same economy, and really it's going to take often labor force participation is a lagging indicator. It follows big improvements in the unemployment rate, and we're probably on track to have that happen. And that means to get back to the kind of great labor market we had before the pandemic, we're going to need a long expansion. To get that, we're going to need price stability. And in a sense, the risk of persistent high inflation is also a major risk to getting back to such a labor market.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, let me thank you for your maximizing the flexibility in the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Steps like self-attestation and bulk utility payments have been very helpful to Rhode Islanders trying to get these returns. One area, though, is very difficult, and it always seems difficult. That is the homeless population. Can you look at and try to develop the ERA guidelines to emphasize how funds can be appropriately used for homelessness?
That's an extremely important area. We're very focused on it, and we'll be happy to work with you on it. What I can say is that ERA funds can be used to provide so-called housing stability services, a range of services to the homeless to help them find a stable shelter. Something that Treasury did, a kind of flexibility that we built into our guidelines is ERA statute requires that to be eligible for assistance, a household has to have a so-called rental obligation. Recognizing that would be something that would be challenging for families experiencing homelessness, we created an opportunity for ERA grantees to provide individuals with a letter of intent to pay a rental obligation. So with this letter of intent, that would make it easier for the homeless to be able to secure housing. So those are two forms of flexibility we think will help, and we'd be glad to work with you to see if we can identify more.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And on communicating those provisions to local authorities would be helpful. And just a final point, Secretary Yellen, this is with the Homeowner Assistance Fund. I know you're looking at the state plans, and if you could accelerate that to get the money out, because as you well know, a lot of these moratoriums on eviction are either going or going, and it would be very helpful to get the money out. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Reed. Senator Crapo of Idaho is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Yellen, some appear to believe that you have announced that unless a debt limit increase or suspension